So after Prohibition and the mob was organized, Lansky and Luciano completely organized crime. They set up the commission. Below the commission was the syndicate, and then all the affiliated associates of the mob. So the commission was pretty much exclusively Italian. The syndicate was mostly Jewish, and then all the other ethnic groups and things were part of the syndicate. And then with that, and then the FBI was finally starting to look into the Mafia. So, and then like I said, the Kefauver Committee, the McClellan Committee, and all the other committees, there was a lot of pressure on the Mafia. So they looked at Cuba as an offshore base of operation for their gambling. Now, the thing with Cuba is Lansky had already had a relationship with Batista. And I think the middleman with that, with Batista was a guy by the name of Roberto Chiri Mendoza, who was a sugar plantation owner in Cuba. So Lansky and Batista already had a relationship going back to the 40s, right after Prohibition. Because after Prohibition, the mob, with their legal distilleries, needed the molasses for rum. So that's how that relationship began. Now, there were already hotels and casinos in Cuba. So it was already a destination point for Americans and vacation and stuff. Batista was in power from 33 to 43, then that time period. He retired in 43 and moved to Miami, and he was just in retirement, a neighbor with the Lansky. They still remain friends in retirement in Miami. By this time, Luciano had been exiled to Italy. So Luciano sent a letter to the Lansky, said he wanted a meeting to discuss what the mob's future would be. And this was in 1947. So a meeting was set up in Cuba, in Havana. So Lansky set up the meeting. He sent a 3-word letter to Luciano in Italy. It just said, December, Hotel Nacional. That's all the letter said. So Luciano got a passport, an Italian passport, in his real name, which was Salvatore Lucania, and traveled to South America, the Caribbean, and into Cuba, because he was not allowed back in the States. And there he met with all the big names of the Mafia at the time. Frank Sinatra was there too. He was escorted there by the Fischetti brothers. They were basically his bodyguards wherever he traveled for these kind of meetings. The Fischettis were Al Capone's cousins from Brooklyn. So they met there, and they discussed the future of the mob, the future of their heroin trade, the future of gambling, and the future of Cuba, because that was basically what it was going to be. Cuba was going to be the mob's retirement community, is what it was going to originally be set up for. The other item of business at that 1947 meeting was the fate of Bugsy Siegel. So, everybody knows Bugsy Siegel was Lansky's friend. They grew up together. They grew up with George Raft, too. Bugsy Siegel ran the wire service out of Los Angeles, and he ran whatever operations were going on in Vegas. So Bugsy Siegel was the Mafia's representative on the West Coast. So Bugsy Siegel started the Flamingo Casino Hotel. And I think a lot of people know the story. The budget overruns. They were accusing him of skimming off the money being made off the West Coast wire service. And so a lot of the commission members kind of had it in for Bugsy. They didn't trust him anymore. It's one thing if you steal, but don't steal from us. And that's what they were accusing Bugsy of. So he was finally, Lansky didn't approve it, but Lansky didn't have any veto power over the commission. So he was assassinated in Beverly Hills. and the guy that pulled the trigger is a guy by the name of Frankie Carbo. I'll talk about him later, but he's a mob hitman, but also he pretty much corrupted professional boxing in America. He was the say-so in boxing. So that was the start of Cuba being the mob's retirement community and just a moneymaker. It was just Cuba became a cash cow. When Batista came back into power, he came back into power, I believe, in 1952. And so when he came back in 52, he hired Lansky to clean up the casinos, because the Cuban casinos had a reputation of being corrupted and fixed, and he did. Lansky, made all the casinos and the hotels legit. So when people came, they knew if they lost, at least they knew they lost legitimately. They weren't tricked, or the games were fixed. Because of Lansky and the mob, Cuba became a huge cash cow for the mob, bigger than Vegas. And all the hotels, the Hotel Capri, the Nacional, all the big name hotels, and then all the big name acts, all the American acts that came to Cuba and performed there, and just a nightclub scene that was like unbelievable. Latin jazz, hot Latin jazz, and everything, and so they really cleaned up the place. It was a legit place. So, but then everybody knows about the Cuban Revolution and everything. And then again, I want to mention George Raft, because when Bugsy Siegel was killed, the mob took over the Flamingo. The Flamingo was finally completed. It became a success, and the mob put George Raft in charge of booking the acts and being the host of the Flamingo, and George Raft was doing very well there. So when Cuba kicked off and was such a success, Santo Trafficante asked George Raft to come to Cuba and be the host of his new hotel, the Capri, Hotel Capri. George Raft accepted. So he was there. He was the host of the thing, and he attracted all the big name people, actors and actresses from America and everywhere. So when that revolution kicked off, many of the casinos were ransacked. The slot machines were burned. They allowed pigs to run through the casinos. Then they got to the Hotel Capri and George Raft. And this is a true story. One of the leaders of the revolution was a female. So when she came into the place with the revolutionaries, she saw George Raft. Now, in English, she says, "It's the movie star George Raft." In English, she said that. And that kind of calmed everybody down, because everybody knew George Raft. He was pretty popular, And so he negotiated with them. They left the casino alone. He gave them food. He gave them drink. So he saved that casino. And that, I keep mentioning movies. So there was a biopic about George Raft called The George Raft Story. Ray Danton played George Raft. It was with Jane Mansfield. And they depicted that scene in the movie. So, George Raft's celebrity and popular saved that one casino anyway.
His celebrity saved
the day. Saved the day, yeah. I got to admit, I kind of, over the years, I've come to like George Raft. I like his movies, because I like film noirs and stuff. And he was a cool guy. He never... Yeah, he worked for Oni Madden, but only as a driver, but that was it. But he never got really involved in bootlegging or the rackets, but he never disassociated himself from his friends that he basically grew up. Sinatra did the same thing. He never disassociated the people he grew up with, and so that helped him in the beginning, because he was so believable in these gangster roles. But then after World War II, he was a popular entertainer for the troops, both American and British. And so after the war, he became more of a sympathetic kind of character. He became more of a heroic kind of character. But that his gangster reputation caught up with him, especially with the movie moguls and stuff. And so he kind of like fell by the wayside.